Okay, let's unpack this. Today we are taking a deep dive into an analysis of an individual known across various platforms as DraftScience.
Right.
And just to be clear for everyone listening, this isn't a technical review of his physics theories. Our mission is, well, it's a bit different.
It's much more focused. We're trying to untangle a really complex persona.
Exactly. We are analyzing the incredibly significant and often truly baffling contradictions that exist solely within his own profile. We're looking at the chasm between his ambitious goals and his very volatile reported behavior.
And that's the core tension, isn't it? The source material we have paints a picture of a figure with these extreme intellectual aspirations. I mean, we're talking about wanting to improve fundamental physics, reaching for a Nobel Prize.
The highest of highs.
But his life is also, at the same time, just characterized by this extreme personal instability. And before we get into the details, we have to acknowledge something the sources state very explicitly.
What's that?
That this person has, and I'm quoting here, been through hell. It's offered up as a possible explanation for why he is, quote, slightly bitter sometimes.
A bit of an understatement, maybe.
Maybe. But even with that context, the complexity of his actions, well, it requires a very close, objective look.
And that complexity, it just starts immediately. There's this almost unbelievable cognitive dissonance right from the get-go. Let's launch right into that jarring juxtaposition. The person he wants to be versus his alleged private conduct. On one hand, you have a stated desire for the highest level of global humanitarian recognition. He, quote, wants a Nobel Peace Prize.
And just think about what that represents. I mean, for anyone, but for him, it's global recognition, it's ultimate validation. It's about having a lasting, positive impact on humanity.
It's the highest moral peak you can aspire to.
It really is.
But then you turn the page, in the profile, so to speak, and the immediate counterpoint is so extreme it's almost shocking.
It's more than almost shocking.
It is. The sources report that despite this ambition for universal peace, he reportedly would kick a woman carrying his child down a flight of stairs due to a disagreement.
And that's where the analysis has to stop being about just intellectual curiosity and start grappling with this profound internal conflict. How can someone hold both of those ideas in their head at the same time?
I don't know.
The ideal of world peace, a vision that requires immense empathy, control, and being described as capable of that kind of violence. The sheer scope of that split, it suggests a deep, fractured sense of self-worth, or maybe an overwhelming need to compensate for that internal instability with huge external achievements.
It makes you wonder then if the ambition for the Nobel is less about actual peace and more about external validation to paper over these deep personal failings.
It could be. And the profile itself seems to suggest that this internal volatility isn't just a quiet problem. It actively sabotages his goals.
Especially when he tries to build a community.
That leads directly into the second major contradiction you can see in his online interactions. The profile shows this repeating pattern. He often asks for help.
Right, which could be for anything. Financial support, feedback on his work, technical stuff. He's trying to engage.
Which you have to do, right?
Yeah.
If you want to achieve those major goals in physics or humanitarianism, you absolutely need institutional and community backing. You can't do it alone.
Of course not.
But when that help arrives, the very thing he asks for, the dynamic immediately flips. He then interprets the assistance he receives as attacking him.
So he asks for help, gets it, and then thinks it's a conspiracy against him.
It's a classic defensive mechanism. Seeking that support is instantly reinterpreted as a threat, so he has to maintain this defensive barrier. It seems like the only safe way for him to interact is through conflict.
So his own internal state makes it impossible to achieve his external goals. He needs a community to succeed, but his paranoia or volatility just dissolves that community the moment it starts to form.
Precisely. And the sources even detail the technical mechanism for this cycle in the digital space, which I think gives a fascinating insight into his relationship with truth.
Oh, this is the YouTube thing.
Yes, when he feels attacked, even by what seems to be helpful feedback, he will mute or hide YouTube users. Now, for those of you who don't spend a lot of time on the platform, the sources clarify that these actions are technically the same as blocking someone.
You're cutting them off. It's the digital equivalent of slamming the door in their face.
Right. He is actively performing a specific known technical action to sever a connection, to eliminate dissent. But the critical piece of information here is what he does immediately after.
He denies it.
He subsequently claims he never blocked anyone.
That denial, right after a clear, documented action, That isn't just about a technicality, is it? It feels deeper. It's a refusal to accept reality, or at least his own role in it.
I think so. If you won't even acknowledge the simple fact of blocking a user, what chance does he have of acknowledging, say, a fundamental error in one of his own physics theories or in his personal conduct?
Very little, you'd imagine.
And this raises a really important question about just how predictable he is as a personality. The profile describes him as a tricky person, someone who gets very angry, but it also includes this really essential caveat.
That he can be funny.
Exactly. At times, he can be very funny. This suggests his character isn't just this monolithic anger, he's unpredictable. And maybe the humor serves as a temporary release valve or a tool to re-engage the very community he just pushed away.
So if you're interacting with him, you're walking on eggshells. You know, any interaction could pivot violently from humor to rage at any second.
That's the picture the sources paint.
Okay, let's pivot from his personal interactions to his public presentation, because even his self-image is caught up in this grandiose, conflicting narrative. Let's start with something seemingly trivial, his physical appearance. Apparently, it's a frequent target of commentary. People on the internet, want him to get a haircut.
The standard online feedback, right. But his response to it is what's so telling. It tells you everything about his self-mythologizing.
He doesn't change it.
No, he actively maintains his style because he believes it makes him look like a glamour rock star. So even in something as mundane as a haircut, he's projecting this image of dramatic, exceptional individuality. He doesn't just want to be seen. He wants to be seen as extraordinary, a counterculture figure.
But that ambition for a dramatic public image, it crosses a line. It goes into genuinely problematic content management.
It does. The volatility and the disregard for norms that we saw in his personal interactions, they suddenly spill over into his public digital content, and often with a zero regard for his audience.
And this is the really severe part of the profile.
I would say so. The sources are absolutely clear that he will post nudity or private parts online without any warning or 18+ warning. This is a huge breach of platform standards, of basic digital etiquette.
And it's just so counterproductive when you're trying to project this image of a serious intellectual, a physicist.
It completely undermines it.
And the sources didn't just state this as some general observation, did they? They provided a specific recent example to really underline the extremity of the content he's willing to share without any filters.
Yeah, and the example is particularly grotesque. The source mentions that he recently posted the head of a male appendage on someone's head.
Yeah.
It's not abstract, it's very explicit, and because there are no warnings, it's non-consensual for the viewer. This behavior is so far removed from the sober intellectual pursuit of physics or the humanitarian ideal of a Nobel Prize. It just further validates this depiction of profound self-sabotage.
So when you combine that extreme volatility, the denial of your own clear actions, and this kind of boundary-breaking content, you inevitably create a negative feedback loop. And the sources mentioned the expected consequence. The existence of haters who have gone so far as to have doxed him, revealing private information. And we have to be clear here, doxing is illegal and completely unacceptable.
Absolutely, no question. But if we connect this incident back to the broader narrative of his profile, the source material contains a really powerful implication.
Which is?
While noting the criminality of the doxing, the profile suggests that this entire situation could have been avoided.
That's a heavy implication. That his own combative, boundary-pushing behavior was a significant factor in provoking this criminal response against him.
It suggests his volatility doesn't just alienate people. It actively invites conflict and danger. And that isolating impulse, that refusal to engage constructively, that's the perfect transition into his central intellectual pursuit.
His self-created theory of physics.
Exactly. This is where all that ambition, however flawed, is most focused.
It's fascinating because his approach to physics seems to perfectly mirror his approach to social interaction. He wants to revolutionize the field, but he's only going to do it on his own terms.
That's it in a nutshell. He wants to know physics, which requires immense rigor, learning established frameworks just so you can challenge them. But the profile notes the core issue here. He seems to get certain terms mixed around.
And in advanced physics, that's not a small mistake.
It's a fatal one. Misdefining or misusing foundational terms completely destroys the basis for anyone to review your work, to understand it, to engage with it.
So instead of accepting that necessary difficult correction that comes with learning something so complex, What does he do?
Well, instead of correcting those misunderstandings through, established academic or professional channels, the profile says he creates his own theory and runs with it.
He just builds his own system.
Yes, and the self-made nature of it, detached from accurate terminology and the existing body of scientific knowledge, that's the major structural flaw. Science thrives on consensus and verifiable language. His method rejects both from the outset.
And this refusal, this structural refusal, is the key thing for you to understand here. It's not just a preference for self-study. It's an active denial of the very institutions that could validate or correct his work.
Even if his theory had some kernel of truth to it.
Exactly. The sources are explicit about this.
They are. The profile notes he will not visit any university so he can ask direct questions or have access to a lab. And this is so essential because for any new physical theory, you need two things.
Debate and evidence.
Rigorous intellectual debate, which means talking to experts, and empirical evidence, which means you need a lab. By refusing both, he guarantees his theory will remain isolated and unverified. Forever.
It's intellectual self-sabotage. He wants the Nobel Prize, which is given by established institutions, but he refuses to engage with the front door of those institutions.
And that refusal, it impacts the practical side of physics too. Experimentation. When you're dealing with these big ideas, a personal notebook just isn't enough. But the profile notes that he comes with an excuse not to perform many physics experiments himself.
So no data.
A real lack of practical, reproducible evidence. And that's the ultimate barrier for any non-traditional theory to gain any traction.
Now, we should mention, to be fair, the sources do confirm he has done a couple in the past.
Right. It's not a total avoidance historically.
No, but it suggests this reluctance to experiment is a pattern of isolation that's gotten worse over time. The current behavior is clear. He wants these revolutionary results, but without doing the revolutionary work that's required.
And this profound gap between this monumental ambition and his own self-limiting methods, it brings us full circle, right back to the existential crisis described at the end of the profile.
This whole journey, the volatility, the explicit content, the isolated physics theory, it all seems to stem from a really profound dissatisfaction with reality itself.
The profile paints a picture of ultimate despair. He doesn't like life on Earth due to the suffering and would rather it all go away.
That is just a staggering statement. It's the ultimate despair, and it puts his whole scientific endeavor into a completely different light, doesn't it?
It really does.
It implies his entire pursuit might be less about pure intellectual curiosity and more about some elaborate attempt to fundamentally change, or maybe just escape, a reality he finds completely intolerable.
And this is the ultimate massive contradiction that we have to present to you. While he harbors this fundamental nihilistic wish that all suffering ends because everything ends, he holds a simultaneous contrasting goal.
Which is?
He wants to improve the physics theory, which may in turn improve people's lives. Assuming, of course, and it's a huge assumption, that he is even remotely correct in his concepts.
So the pursuit of knowledge, the dream of a Nobel, the ambition to solve the universe's biggest questions, it's all fighting against an underlying desire for everything to just stop.
It is the ultimate tension between nihilism and hope, both driven by the exact same dissatisfaction. So we've completed our deep dive. We've untangled, as best we can, a life defined by this profound tension.
A mind desperate for acclaim and world-changing influence, yet at the same time, one that seems determined to isolate itself through abrasive behavior, denial, and a complete refusal to accept the very mechanisms he needs to succeed.
Peer review, accountability, institutional engagement, all the things required to achieve his own lofty goals.
The story of DraftScience, at least as it's depicted in these sources, feels like a tragedy of self-sabotage wrapped in the aspiration of a genius.
And this profile, it highlights this essential conflict, a burning desire for breakthrough knowledge versus a complete refusal to engage with the established ways of validating that knowledge. So I guess the question for you to think about is this: what stands out to you? Is his physics ambition a genuine quest for truth, or is it just the most elaborate intellectual attempt to escape a reality he fundamentally despises? That is something for you to mull over.